Grow, Sell, and Retire is the podcast for the lazy overachiever. BD Dalton, author of The Assisted Purchase, True Gravity, and Grow, Sell, and Retire, is here to give his 25 years of secrets, tips, and assistance to take your business to the next level. This podcast is for anyone who wants to sell more, work less, and make better business. Now, here's your host, BD, with today's GSR podcast.
Hey everybody, BD Dalton here, Grow, Sell, and Retire podcast. And if you've ever had an Italian ice, if you've ever had a flavored coffee, you're going to be very excited to be sat here with me today because I'm here with Melanie Dulbecco. And I kept in my head before the show, I kept on saying Dulbecco, and it was all there. But of the Torani company. And I've been following you for years and years and years, ever since I came back from Spain and went to, actually, you guys used to be in Starbucks a lot until they started doing their own brands. But over to you to kind of walk through family company, been around since 1925. And then how'd you come into it and where do we go? And we'll go into a lot of management and other things that you've worked on, but a fabulous company. But welcome, Melanie.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. Well, I've been with Torani for 33 years. It's a really long time. And over that period of time, we've grown on average 20% a year, which means that we've doubled in size roughly every 4 years. So we've gone from a very small, it was a second and third generation family business, to a large mid-market company. So we've gone from less than $1 million in revenue to over $500 million in revenue. And we're just getting started. So when I joined, I was not part of the family. It was second and third generation. And a wonderful family in a neighborhood in San Francisco that needed jobs, needed economic development. And that's what motivated me to talk with them. I grew up knowing Torani. It's a local San Francisco Bay Area brand. And I really liked it, but it hadn't been popularized yet. So when I talked with the family about my interest in creating jobs and what we could do together, they brought me in and we started on a tear. So here we are all these years later, having grown the business a lot.
And you came in 91. So Schultz and everybody with Starbucks and it started bringing cafe culture into Seattle. I'm from Seattle in the 80s. So were you guys able to really ride that wave of cafe culture and did that accelerate, or were you guys at the beginning when you stepped in, were they still focused on Italian ice and kind of the novelty side?
I would say that helped us a lot, and that we also taught Starbucks how to make flavored drinks. So up until the 1980s, well into the 1980s, coffees and European style cafes were very much more traditional. So I had cappuccinos when I went to college. And we had invented the flavored latte in the early 1980s, but we hadn't popularized it. And we had started to teach cafes, including Starbucks in the Northwest, what to do with flavor. And a lot of the traditional Italian community said, "You want to do what to your espresso?" It was sacrilegious to even think about that, right? But it made it approachable, it made it fun, made it delicious, and personalized the experience for people. So it got going. Now, when I joined Torani, you might know us now for coffee, or you might think of syrups. We think of it as a flavor company. But when I joined, it was described by the family members to me as a liquor business.
Wow.
It's kind of hard to imagine, right? So I think the craziest thing that we've ever done at Torani was completely change our business model. And I think of it not as a business model, but as an era of growth. It's the way we talk about growth internally at Torani, that every single team member, from frontline team members, hourly team members, and manufacturing, distribution, other roles, up through food science, and you name it, everyone can talk about an era. And when we talk about the liqueur and cordial era, we talk about how when Prohibition was repealed, we started making flavor in alcohol. We made Italian soda flavors. And then we were doing it in another form. And the craziest idea was to say, look, we've invented this. We haven't popularized it. What if we shifted the focus of the business to this new idea? So that was pretty remarkable, I think, that the second generation family member, Harry, said, let's do it. He was a man who was in his 70s, who had built the success of the business to that date that supported the family, and decided that a change would be a good idea. So that's pretty bold and exciting.
So when you're on this journey, and you're going from this turnover to the mega turnover that you're at now, how do you keep things fun and not feeling it's hard to do in corporate? I think going from family business to big corporate or mid-market or whatever you call it, but most people would consider it a decent sized business.
Yes.
How do you keep it fun?
It's a large mid-market company. So first of all, you said one word that we put a red circle line through, which is corporate. I think business doesn't have to be corporate. No matter how big we get, our whole objective is to keep it personal, to stay connected, to be connected. And our larger purpose is to build an opportunity company. We really believe that businesses can and should create more opportunity and more success for everyone, right? Not just for shareholders, but for all the individuals involved, our team members, our customers, our stakeholders. So it's a stakeholder capitalism model. And we think a lot about our frontline team members and our internal team members. If we're doing right by our team, we will be there for our customers, and it creates a generative cycle of success.
So you have that. So are you an employee-owned company, or it's partially employee-owned?
We have a 10% ESOP, which has been pretty exciting. So as we've gone about building opportunities and job opportunities and all kinds of career opportunities for people internally, we started off right away when I joined, making sure that everybody was above market rate pay in all the different positions. And we look a lot at living wage and what that target is. We also established right away profit sharing. And another thing that I think makes a big difference is bonus for everybody in the company. It's not typical for hourly team members to be bonus based on top line revenue and bottom line profitability. That's something that I think connects us all here. So we, in our town hall meetings quarterly, we share our financials. We build financial literacy across our whole team. And people know how we're doing, and we celebrate successes together. We brainstorm around how we're going to navigate challenging circumstances. So bonus for everybody, profit sharing for everybody. And then when we had the opportunity to buy what we could of the company ourselves, when there was unfortunately, one of our family members at Torani passed away. And we were able to buy 10% of the company ourselves to turn into an ESOP. And that has added as well to our team's success. So the idea of shared success is hugely motivating to all of us here.
So a bit of a tricky one here, but how about if you were to go back through that level of success and you were to pick a mascot for Torani?
Yeah.
What would you turn it into, or what would you say is of the journey? What does that mascot look like? How does it feel?
Yeah. Well, let me start with, if I were to reframe the name of your podcast for us, and then a mascot for that, instead of grow, sell, and retire, it would probably be grow, create success for many, and pass the torch. And I think about how we create legacy, how we do other things. I think if we had to pick a mascot, most of them are kind of funny characters. I don't think it's a funny, but I think it's a joyful character. It would be somebody who's an explorer. It would be somebody exploring the potential of what could be done. And it's not exploring unknown lands. It's re-exploring the lands that we're already in with a new eye. So when I think about the way business is conducted and what I learned in business school, we work on spreadsheets, we work on income statements, we work on driving profitability for shareholders, and that is driven into us at business school, right? Yep. But I think long-term success for shareholders starts with success for our team members and our customers. And that if we keep that order in mind, that we will generate a lot more long-term success. So it's a rethinking of business, especially when we get to hard times. So the explorer is the person who's taking a fresh eye to the lands that we're already in.
Awesome. So an explorer. So in that, so you have Lewis and Clark and all these other people. So what was a best collaboration that you guys came up with over the last 30 years, whether it was a flavor collaboration or a branding collaboration? What was one of the best things that's come up for you when it comes to working with another company?
Yeah, I think business is a circle of success. So in this idea of shared success, I think one of the most smart collaborations we ever did was to get launched into what we call now the Café Era, right? So first we had the Taste of the Homeland era when we got started. Mm-hmm. It was family members bringing recipes from Italy to an Italian immigrant community in San Francisco, very local. Prohibition is repealed. They both get licensed right away. We didn't bootleg. We always did things when they were legal and right? So then we go into the liqueur and cordial era. We moved into the cafe era, grew like crazy. We're in a new era now. We could talk more about that. But when I think about how we launched the cafe era and the collaboration there, we didn't have enough resources to go to market completely on our own. We had to figure out a scrappy way to do that. And I think where a lot of small businesses get into trouble is when we borrow too much money or we get outside financing that says, go, 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 because outside financing can take a lot of risk, right? And they might invest in many companies and just say, go, go, go. And we get ourselves into trouble. So I think more, how do we bootstrap our way to that growth? So not only have we gone from a small company to a large mid-market company, we've done it through our own cash flow.
Wow.
And the way we went to market was through collaboration with coffee roasters. So they were already in cafes, educating on their coffee. They were making deliveries. Rather than borrow money to invest in a fleet of trucks and try to figure out the whole normal, like, this is the way you do it, we thought, why don't we collaborate with coffee roasters? This is an added sale for them. Let's think of them as our extended team. And let's build a team that works with them. And that way we could really get it rolling, and it worked. Now, many, many others followed in those footsteps afterwards, but we were the first to do that. And it created a whole way to go to market that was shared. So nobody had ever heard of a vanilla latte yet. Nobody had gone through coffee roasters to go to market in that way. So it created a circle of success, putting cafes and baristas at the center.
So when you're doing this, because you guys are also innovative, because you were one of the first sugar-free syrups that I saw out there way back in the day. So when you're in it, how do you innovate, or how do you guys look at things and say, actually, we need to go in this direction?
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, we love flavor so much, and getting flavor to people that allows them to have flavor in the way they want it. So we think of flavor in two ways. One is flavor is obviously what we make, and I'll tell you about how we innovate that. We also talk about flavor being what we bring. So each person brings their own flavor. Mm-hmm. Each person has their own way of expressing themselves. And we want to make sure that we're offering flavor in a lot of different ways. So yes, sugar-free was a really important project for us. Having lots of different flavors in different formats is important to us. And then when we're working on unique flavors, something that's new, we have a gold standard process. So I don't know if you're familiar with our flavor of the year.
No.
You might not be. So this is a project that's really fun for our team and fun for our customers. So each year we think about what is an up and coming flavor, or what is a signal of the times in terms of flavor. In 2024, we launched Galaxy. It's our first fantasy flavor.
Okay.
There was a lot of talk about space this year. We had an eclipse, and we thought, there's a lot of knowledge about the galaxy, but what would it taste like? So our food scientists worked with space scientists to try to understand what the taste of space would be. Now, normally, if we have something like, if we're working on a flavor like dragon fruit, which is a flavor we have, what we would do is buy dragon fruit from the store. We might talk with a Vietnamese cafe that we're friends with and say, how do you think of dragon fruit? What are the best dragon fruit products you've had? We have a gold standard process where we taste and we figure out what that true taste would be. We describe it and then we replicate it by working with flavor companies from around the world. And then we mix the right flavors together. Now with space, it's a little bit different. So we know, we worked with them to identify that there's a compound in space that's also found in raspberries. So that way we could take raspberry as the base flavor and create a fantasy flavor that had raspberry, a little hint of rum, non-alcoholic, but a little hint of rum flavor, which is also in that same compound, and then add some minerality to it. So it makes a really fun soda, or it's great in an energy drink, or you could put it in a white mocha or something like that, and coffee drink as well.
Very nice.
So it's really fun to create new flavors.
So then on that same line of innovation and everything, how do you guys fail fast, or how do you say that actually doesn't work at all? or yes. if the public says we're not buying that, or we've moved on, or something goes wrong, how do you fail faster? How do you move on?
Yeah, that's such an important concept, and it's one we've learned again and again. I think the way we innovate has changed at different sizes of company, different resources, different stages of growth. At first, we were our own best consumers, working directly with cafes, figuring out what the needs were and moving pretty quickly. Then when we got a little bit larger, we had to start thinking about how do we learn before we go to market so that we can fail early when it's not costly, right? So that might be a go-to-market test with a series of cafes. That's what we did before to launch things. We would start with a smaller volume with a few places to test something out. Now at this stage of growth, what we think a lot about are consumers and what consumers want. So we're in the consumer era now. And for us, that means not only do we want to be in people's home kitchens, which we really do. We want to be in people's homes. We want to be within arm's reach of flavor. But we also have helped our cafe and drink shop customers grow by really understanding consumers well and saying, you know what? Here's what your young consumer is looking for. So we do a lot of original research and we look at what the trends are, what people are drinking. Like right now, coffee, if you are a person in your early 20s, you're not going for coffee probably. You might be going for a cold coffee drink, but you're probably reaching for an energy drink with flavor in it. That's really popular. So we want to make sure that at this stage, we have the right information about consumers, and then we might learning launch things online with a small group of consumers or with one of our partners so that we identify what the right consumer aspects are and then test it out and then hone it before we do a major launch.
That's awesome. So when did we transition? Because you just went from Café Era to, I know you want to talk about now consumer era. When did we transition from Café Era, which, the Schultz and you guys and everybody else? And then when do we go from that era to now the pink fluffy drink era or consumer era? Yeah.
So, there are all these, there are all these hurdles of growth. And I found that the eras really help us focus and make choices, right? So we're strategy geeks around here. We love strategy, and strategy means that we're making really good choices about where we're going to focus. So the era helps with that. The other thing that we've noticed is that that at different sizes of company, we have to really rethink our leadership. So when we were knocking on the door of $50 million in revenue, and now we hit that in a month, right? But when we were knocking on that for the year, it was a really big change in leadership style. for me and for our team. We had to really think about how do we build out more leadership in the company and more shared leadership and shared approaches to our projects. I would say that, again, it happened at about $100 million in annual revenue. At 250 was another breaking point for us. And then we started to learn about how it would be at 500 million, which is where we heard the next breaking point was. Now we're hearing it's $1 billion for the next one. So we learned by going and talking with people who've been there, done that. What did you experience when you shifted from this size to this size? What did you learn? What worked? What would you do all over again because it didn't work? And what we learned at this stage is it's all about scaling culture and connection. So that's where we are now. So that's a subtext to the era. Yeah. So in the Café Era, we reached a point where we had a lot of competitors. Like we all reach that in business at a certain point, right? You create a category, new competitors come in. Great. It should make us better and better. And then we start to reach a point where we realize to really do well, we need to add more value. How do we add more value? And our whole goal is not to sell. What we see happening with smaller companies all around us is that they reach a particular size where it's hard to grow, and they'll sell out to a huge company, a Goliath, a Bigfoot. And they get gobbled up, and the culture and what made them special gets gobbled up into the spreadsheets. We don't want to do that. We want to create a business that can sustain itself for a long-term success and sustain the team members, our customers, our stakeholders, our shareholders, the community, and be successful in the long run. So this idea of passing the torch at some point in time. And in the Café Era, we weren't going to be able to do that if we just stayed where we were. So it was a big internal debate. We had a lot of people who said, let's just double down on this and keep it going. And what we realized when we hit the Great Recession was not only did we hit a bump in the market, but our business model was going flat as well.
Wow.
And why not use the opportunity of the Great Recession to reset the team and say, it's time to innovate how we operate. So let's hold the business steady. In our now 99-year history, BD, we've never had a layoff.
Nice.
And we intend to make it through every business challenge with team members first. So we know that in order to grow on average 20% a year, we need to retain our team. We have a very high retention rate. So there's magic in having people who've been here a long time and people who join the company with fresh ideas and approaches. That's the way we keep that mix going. So when we were hitting this flat time, right? Yes. With a threat of going down in revenue, we went out and explored for a year. What have other companies done when they've hit this point? How have they innovated? As
you're going through this, I want to interrupt because the thread's great. Where did you go to find this? Because I think that's what a lot of people have a hard time going to somebody and saying, I'm having a problem. Could you please help? Or how did you solve this? People don't have that friendship group typically. So where did you go to find that information?
So, for me, it started personally and then went to team. So back to that time when we were knocking on the door of $50 million in annual revenue, I reached a point where I was feeling uncomfortable with how we were doing things. And I was working all the time. And we weren't going to be able to grow if I didn't do things differently. So I did join a CEO peer learning group. That helped me reflect a lot better. And I started to talk with people who'd been there, done that. So I said, hey, Cliff Bar down the street, their CEO went past $50 million. They're now $110 million at the time. Can you make an introduction? I talked to our banker. Can you make an introduction? I'd like to go talk with the CEO there. And then I started to do that. I called people. I hopped in my car. At conferences, I would talk with people after talks. And I learned from people who've navigated that particular inflection point, right? So what happened at that next inflection point is rather than do that on my own, we did it as a team. And it created something that we now call learning journeys. We didn't call it that at the time, but we fashioned it ourselves. We said, okay, what are we trying to do? What is the purpose? What are we trying to learn about? What are some of the key areas of learning? What are some of the questions? Now, if we could talk to anybody, who would it be? And we scoured books and conferences and all kinds of things. And we said, let's pick up the phone and call these folks. Let's call Chris at IDEO, who leads their food practice, and tell him we're on a learning journey and see if, and you know what was amazing? People said, you're doing what? Okay, yeah, we'll talk with you about that, because they were curious about how we were learning. And we ended up making all kinds of friends along the way. So what we did at the end of that year is we downloaded our learnings, we figured out the key learnings, and then we uploaded them to New Strategy, and we entered the consumer era with a whole new business model. We're in the process of doing that again now. And not because our business model is worn, but because we see the market changing so quickly. We see technology advancing really quickly, and we see that young consumers, especially in their teens and early 20s, are so different than the generations before us that we're learning all over again about what the future might look like so that we can build for that future.
So if we talk about that, what are you guys, how are you using technology in the business and technology for yourself? So let's talk about the business, and then how about you as a CEO? What are you doing to make it so you can focus through times like this and actually be able to help us and talk to people like on Grow, Sell, and Retire podcast? So, you're building time into your schedule to do fun and cool things.
Yeah, well, we all have to support each other and get through these tough moments. And if we can have more people that operate their businesses for long-term success with a people-first focus, then that's what we live for at Torani. We really think that businesses can be run more successfully with a different focus. So we want to talk about that. So in terms of technology, focus, strategy, it's really important for us to start with a vision of success. So we look at what's the context of the era we're in. And then we always look out 5 to 7 years. What does success look like? Like right now, we're working against 2030. We had a 2025 vision. We're right on top of it and we're hitting it. So a couple years ago, we created our 2030 vision. And then we look at that as the context within the era. And then every year we do a 3-year plan. And we talk about, what are the 5 or 6 strategies that are our focus? What are we focused on? So we pick 5 or 6 things and we talk about them. And each year we say, is it a tweak? Are strategies working, so it's just a tweak? Or is it an overhaul? And then we enlarge the group. And then we do an annual plan, right? So we start with a group of very long-term strategic thinkers, about 12 people. Last week, we had our planning for next year, strategic planning for next year. We had a group of 38 people.
Wow.
And what we think about is, if you're a leader in Torani, your role is not just to represent your function. It's not just that you're from IT, or you're from manufacturing, or you're from marketing. You are a leader across the whole company. So your role in that meeting is not to represent your function, but to learn about these strategies that maybe you're uncomfortable with because you're not that familiar with them. But if you can talk about the strategies with your team, that's exactly what we want. And also, you'll be able to ask the right questions so that we can make the strategies clearer. And then we create cross-functional teams against them, and then we go like crazy. So it's like stretching a rubber band and letting it go when we have so many people aligned on where we're headed.
That's fabulous. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the podcast, and we always do the rewind moment. So If you can give us one thing, so if they listen to just the last minute of this and they think, actually, Melanie sounded really good, I'm going to rewind and listen to the whole thing again. What's your top tip or your thought? I think I can get it, but I want to have you bring us into it. So your top tip or rewind moment from Melanie.
I have two.
Ooh, look at this.
I have two. The first one would be, if I could rewind my own trajectory or this podcast, I would go back to learning from the start, to always talk with people who've been there, done that. It doesn't mean you have to follow their way. Learn from people who've done it all different ways and decide what's right for you, right? And then as that explorer, use your own compass. When I think about what drives us and motivates us, purpose and having a sense of purpose and what we're building for the shared success of many motivates us to run our business and make different choices. Rather than purely looking at the bottom line and running it from an income statement, we've had very good long-term, many years, and a good trajectory of financial success based on operating on principles of shared success and people first. So I would say get comfortable with your own compass in making your choices.
That is fabulous. Melanie Dulbecco, that was fabulous to have you on the Grow, Sell, and Retire podcast. Thank you so much for your time and your amazing thoughts. It was great to have you on.
Thank you, BD. It's really great to be here.
Thanks for joining us on Grow, Sell, and Retire. For more information, tools, or to book one of our team members to work with your team, business, or to speak at your event or conference, visit rockfind.co.uk. If you like the podcast, you'll love one of BD's 3 books: The Assisted Purchase, True Gravity, and the book the podcast is based on, Grow, Sell, and Retire. If you want to work for the rest of your life, that is your business. If you don't, that is ours.